roll call, we are all present. Okay. So I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. So,
I'll second
discussion. So, Deb and I worked through the detail of the building, which here is kind of interesting. We were all separated by some of the week. This agenda tonight is going to focus on budget presentation. We're talking about the calendar, superintendent's calendar. And that really is kind of summing it up. That's really the heart of this. Any further discussions? If not, then I'd like to call for a vote of approval. Call for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So I don't see any visitors tonight. Anybody therefore to make a public comment?
Come on.
Here I am.
And so let's get down to item number 7, which would be staff presentation now.
The first thing I'm talking about is OSPI's choice transfer guidelines. And all right, so the first thing that we're going to go over, and actually I will do this one too. I'll just have take one and copy this down.
Okay.
And that is our school board policy on choice transfer. And then this is our, the next thing that's coming to you is our union policies on choice transfers, or union policy on class sizes. Oh. We're doing
Here, I'm sorry.
all right.
There we go. All right.
So I know that there were some questions before about choice transfer systems and how we work them here at Grapeview. We really don't do anything different than what the state has us do. So the first thing that we look at is what the state requires us to do choice transfer. So that's this first paper here. And it may want a student, or where we want a parent, wants a student to attend a school outside the school district. So oftentimes there are school choices, which parents within a district have multiple schools, and they will try to choose a school that's easier for transportation or whatnot for them. But because we are so many small rural districts out here, Pioneer, Grapeview, Hood Canal, we oftentimes get bigger district students wanting to choice transfer into our wonderful little school, which is fantastic. Actually, right now, about 30% of our students that attend Grapeview are choice transfer students.
So kind of break it down by numbers. What would be English kids? 70% of kids district goes that way.
Not like 150, I think.
150?
Yeah, 150 students are resident students in the district. Or maybe 130. Yeah. But about 30% of our students are choice transfer. And when we look at that choice transfer system, there's multiple things that we look at. But the first thing I would like to basically take a look at is this paper right here. This is our it's go to the where it says section 6 at the top, and then it says textbooks. I'm just double-sided paper right here. Yeah. But you scroll on down to section 9, that's the section we're looking at right here. That is the bargaining agreement. So the Grapeview Education Association, our class size bargaining agreement. And so for TK and then specialists, meaning TK students that are in special classes as well. So PE, art and music, it's 1 teacher to 20 students. And then it goes through K3 specialists is 1 teacher to 22, 4-5, 1 teacher to 26, and 6-8, 1 teacher to 28. So those are what the bargaining agreement has put into place for those teachers. So as soon as that there's overage in those class sizes, we have a overage form. I mean, with the teachers, with that teacher specifically, and we go through their options. All of the options cost the district money. So when that class size goes from 26 students in fourth grade to 27 students in fourth grade. We have an overage meeting with that teacher, and we talk about how we're going to compensate them for that overage process. Sometimes it's with financial stipends every month. Sometimes it's through extra para support, extra teacher support, paid time for report cards. And in fact, most of the time, it's a multitude of those different components to ensure that they get adequate compensation in someone for the large class size, which is a really tough thing to balance because we want full classes. But as soon as we go over, then it costs the district money. Not enough money to split the class, and there are teachers. Sometimes, yes, when we get, 35, 36 students in a class. But then we're going to put them, I need a classroom for them, filling a classroom, so with supplies, with desks, it's an expensive situation. So it's a really tough, thing to balance. We would like to wait to accept a lot of, especially new choice students until the first week of school, so we can see what those classes look like. But even when that happens, there's standards that we have to go by, and things that we have to address to make sure. And I think one thing that tends to get forgotten about is that this isn't the only thing that we first look at as far as if there's enough room in the class. We have to see if there's enough room in the program for that student, because not all students are just a part of the general ed program. So we have one special education teacher, and as of last year in June, I think there were 31 students with IEPs for one special education teacher. Now those are ranging with different needs, but that's over capacity for one teacher. So we don't have a program then for a student coming into our district that's out of district with a special need at that point, that our teacher, our special education teacher, is not able to support one more student with her high caseload that she currently has at that moment. But if a student, an in-district student moves in, then we have to recognize they're an in-district student. We are obligated to make sure that that student gets those supports. And so then we talk about overage, how can we support it? But if we are coming up with overage support for an out-of-district student for a program that's at max capacity, we're not able to provide best interest for that student or that family. So we're not doing them any favors at that point. So we have to look at all of those things. I think that we tend to be forgotten that our special education program does have a capacity, and it can be, bursting at the seams. And especially also, we're not at that 15%, but I know Travis was talking about the legislator trying to bump up, the push for SPED dollars and SPED funding. And that's so important because without that, if they don't raise that, then we're taking in out of district, and taking out of district students who need special education support. We are losing significant money then because our program is at max capacity, and then we're taking students that we're not able to provide services for. We have to provide services for them, but where are we getting that from? It's just it's a financial impact on the district. So we have to look at all of those types of things really carefully. So that's the first thing I look at when I get choice transfers. It's like, is that even an option? Where's the class size at? Is it even a possibility in that class size? And then do they have special needs that we need to be able to address well at our school? Are they needs that we can address? Where are we at with that? So we look at those things first. If all of those things, it says, oh, we've got room in our classrooms, their needs meet our school needs, their reasoning is good and solid, great. But then what we say is, oh, we have 4 kids that meet that qualification for the same classroom. I can only let 2 of them in. Where do I go from there? So then I have to go through this list, and then it's right on here, the state, and then our school board policies for non-resident students. Where I go with that. The first thing is are they having, or do they have a parent that works in our district? So our staff parents, we have several staff members here who have students in our district, and those staff members don't live in our district. But their students, they come here, they get to attend their kid. And the state of Washington says the same thing. If an adult works for a district, bringing their students to work with them is an ideal thing. We want to keep those families together. We want to make sure that they get to come together. That was such a joy for me. We are a district family, but I got to bring my two kiddos to work with me for so many years. It's really a lovely situation that people don't oftentimes get. So that's really special. So we do have several staff members who live out of district, but their kids come to school with them, because that's part of the agreement. The next thing that we look at is if they already have siblings enrolled in our district. Again, we want to keep families together. If they are coming into our, we actually had this situation. So we have a current second grade and fourth grade student, or they're going into second grade and fourth grade. And the fourth graders class had plenty of room. They live in Pioneer District. And so the fourth graders been coming here since first grade. And the family's just been so happy. But the little one, we did not have any room. We were at max capacity in her class for the longest time. And then we were able to accept her this last year as a first grader. And the family was just absolutely thrilled. That was top priority, to make sure that we could try to get that kiddo in and keep the siblings together. For ease for the parents, for transportation, for multiple reasons. That was really important to us. So we will do everything we can to try to make that happen. But again, we have to look at the capacity of the class size first to make sure that it's possible, to make sure we have a program for them. And then we go through, we have a parent working for the district, if they have a sibling already in the district. If they do, then that gets top priority. And then we look at the next things, and it just goes down. So when we get several students wanting to come on into the district, all in the same class too, that's oftentimes what happens. We get these really big bubbles. We will do everything we can to keep our existing students who are here, who are out of district, who have already been with us. We will try to keep them in. We will try to keep their siblings in, and we will do what we can to support those parents who work here and to make that easier for them. So I follow the same guidelines that the state puts out, or those are the same guidelines that are in our board policies. And we just try to do the best we can. It is a really hard thing to do though, because there are a lot of families that get really disappointed because sometimes there's just nothing we can do. Because like let's say last year, our kindergarten was full. We already had like 24 students on the first day of school, and there was a family who lived just outside of our district in Pioneer. And I just said, please put in the request, and we will see what we can do. On the first day of school, when we get there, we see what we have. Well, the first day came in, we wanted 26 kindergartners because so many in-district families registered their kiddos like on the first day of school, which is always so interesting to me. And unfortunately, we had to deny that family's first transfer, and they went to Pioneer. And but I said, you can reapply, and we can see where things are at. And like next year, our class sizes do this. And she did reapply. And then I said, okay, well, let's wait until August because we won't know until the first of the year, first of the school year. And so she said she's going to reapply in August. But her kiddo went through a full year at their home district and did just fine. She said it wasn't bad at all. People make things work. She wants to come here because she works in Bremerton and she would love to be able to have the school on the way to where she works. I mean, it makes sense. I completely get it. We'll always try to help those families. But we will, go through our priority list first to make sure that, we're doing it fair, equitable, and making sense for what board policies are in place, what the state has in place, and supporting our families here as much as we can. We also don't want to set families up for situations where we're not offering the best services. We are a small school, and we do have limited services, especially for special education. And if we are not servicing a student who has really high needs that we don't have the programs for or the people in place for, we're not doing that student any favors. Because those aren't years that students getting what they need. And so we want to make sure that we're honoring what students need. And that's what we're here to do. So that's what, that's really what it comes down to. And we really encourage people to apply in August because a choice transfer is open for 45 days. And if we're not able to accept them in 45 days, then it automatically expires, so they have to reapply. So if they apply in August, then by 45 days, it's in September, and we know what we're able to, manage by that point. We usually know after the first few days of school, and that's when that Friday, last year, that Friday after the first week of school, I was going through a lot of choice transfers at that point to say, yes, this classroom, we do have space, this we do not, this very, and making that for families.
What kind of paperwork do they come with so that you know whether or not they're on an IEP somewhere?
So that's, they fill out, the state has a form that they fill out, they have to get their existing district where they pay taxes, and two has to approve them to apply for choice, has to first accept that they want to go elsewhere. And then that comes to us, and then there's a bunch of questions on there, and there are times that I don't think that the parent has fully read through the questions or given like an A answers, over and over again. So I call them, or I email them, and say, can you modify it for them? Just so that we have, more to work with here. So and to be honest, I think that with most everyone anyway, even if they answered everything thoroughly, I want to know more about their families and if we have programs, not because I'm trying to be overly investigative, but I want to know if we have programs that are right for their. If this is going to get a really thoughtful match for that.
Two-part question.
Mhm.
Do you have someone on staff that assists you?
Sherry Nigara helps a ton with
Okay.
this.
And in your 40+ hours of work, how much time do you spend working on the choice transfer?
It's just the beginning of the year that it's really intense. The rest of the year, we get a couple in here and there, and it's no big deal. Beginning of the year, as I discovered last year, and then I texted Nick and I was like, this was not, like, I knew that this was something you did. I did not quite understand just how much, time this took. He goes, oh, yeah. But no, it was the beginning of the year that took a lot of time. But there's a lot of things that do take a lot of time at the beginning of the year, because it's just kind of the shock. But yeah, the rest of the year, it's pretty relaxed. But I do like to just meet with parents and let them talk. So I have a mom who reached out a couple of weeks ago, wants her kiddo to be in our kindergarten. They live in Shelton, but she goes to the shipyard. And I said, I can't do anything until we get underway. But, next week, once August hits, apply, put in the choice transfer request, and we'll see what we can do. But I really can't do that because I'm gonna buy your school supply list. I'm gonna go with yours. I don't want to, and I get it. And it's just, I don't want to enroll him in our home school district. Okay, but I can't guarantee anything, especially in the kindergarten. That's, we never know what's gonna happen. So I recommend you apply in your home district. I recommend you prepare your student to go to your home district, and then you will look to see if you cover. And so she has a meeting with me on August 16th because she wants to come in and plead her case. It doesn't hold any weight for this situation, but I'm happy to meet with any parent that wants to talk about how much they want their kid to come to our school, because I hear about that. I want them to feel heard, and I want them, to feel valued. So I'm happy to meet with parents that have questions about it.
When we were at like 239-ish, when the end was here, and we were looking at the sheet there, and it looked like when you go through the teacher versus the number of students, like TK and kids, it was like 222 was in the number that kicks into this 11% number and $3 per month.
Yeah.
Were we there during that period?
No, well, to some degree, yes. So we were for a little while because of that 8th grade class. Marion's 8th grade class that graduated from here, not this last year, but the June before. It was 2 classes, and that one was giant. But that was also that year. TK was a part of our total FTE. That's not a part of it anymore. So even when you're looking at, you see that 239, well, you have to take out those, 15 or 17 kids for TK. Because that's not counting to be as a part of our total FTEs anymore. That's on a separate budget now.
But we still get the 10,554.
Yeah, it's just kind of a different line item. So when I report monthly, I include it, but line item, this is our TK, and this is our average total.
So when we're budgeting at 198 this year, we're not including TK in that. That's not a part of our TK is not a part of that 198 budget. It's completely separate. So that's kind of an important thing to be thinking about.
So we get into Tracy's presentation, that is going to be based on the housekeeping. This program, the probability of that budget number being solid and not something that it's too early to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I do have quite a few parents who've been choice transfers and I keep emailing them, you know, saying, hey, let's wait until August. So that way we'll have a better idea then. But I do have quite a few people, every day I usually have 1 or 2 people, wanting to know more about our district. To see if this is, you know, just interested in our district. I did get people emailing me asking me if this is a private school and what our tuition rate is. Because it's just one of those things is, you know, people hear about this little school and they, you know, want to know, oh, can I send my kids, you know, look, we are a public school. And, you know, I send them the boundary map, but you're welcome to apply for choice transfer, please wait until August.
Supported that, that's coming.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good presentation, thank you. Okay. One more questions. Without number 8, announcement for presentation. Check this out and staff development really on. All right, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Yeah, thank you. Discussion? Okay, so in here is general fund, capital projects, and then we're hiring the budget.
Shell 6 is a
Yeah.
must.
Yeah.
She just can't get away from
I know.
it. She's trying to escape and we keep sucking her back in.
But she was also, last year she was substitute professor. And we treated her so nicely.
We're so.
Yeah,
Just.
Right on.
she's
And
awesome.
she's already trained.
Yes.
Well, Grant Buster, we had a trainer that we hired. We have a machine, we have a new trainer.
We use Annie Bell. Yeah, Michelle would have enough years of experience, I believe, you have to have 2 years of writing experience to be considered to be accepted into the training program that's competitive. But she's potentially good. Kirby's interested too, but he has to wait 2 years, and I think he'll be very good.
Any more discussion? Call for vote, all in favor?
Hi.
Okay, now we're down to get to the meeting meeting. Principal report, superintendent. Gary?
All right. Items here, so. Let's see, Apollo projects, they're still working hard, taking longer than they expected, but it's coming along. They're great to work with, they're very flexible. They're still waiting on a few items, which is kind of why it's still hanging out there, but anytime we need anything or move anything, they've been fantastic. They expect to have all the parts that they need and everything installed in December, but then that leaves us with a problem because it's an air conditioning system. We can't really get it up and running well unless it's warm weather. So they will test it this spring. The public machine. I trust them on that, so I talked with OSBI about the grant parameters and they said that should be a. And we won't need it air conditioning before then. So. What's that? Yes. Today we interviewed a candidate for Tracy's position. She has excellent experience, enough to be knowledgeable, but still enough to be able to be here for a while, hopefully. She interviewed well and we are checking references. And hopefully as soon as that comes through, if they are consistent with what we think, we'll have a letter of intent as soon as possible, and then in August, the contract, or she knows when we're starting, and that's advantageous, so.
Does she have contracts anywhere else?
And then there was a candidate that found this district. Shale, et cetera.
And quite a bit of experience.
Yeah, and a larger.
Credentials, so we're really pleased.
Very fortunate. And she seemed pretty passionate about being in a small school and having that experience. Loves to work in Stanford school, so. I'm smiling all over.
Yeah, so we'll see.
It's comforting that.
As long as references are consistent with what we saw, we should be in good shape.
Just sit her down in front of a spreadsheet and do a test, give her all the parameters and go solve for X. And,
Take 10 kids away middle of the
Yeah.
year and.
do a budget that doesn't suck.
How, what you do is so broad, how many of those things?
Not all, that was one of our questions, actually, what functional areas that I oversee, has she had experience in, and very strong in the physical piece. And including all the different funds that she worked with, strong in payroll, which puts under HR and business. HR would probably be an area of weakness or needs development. She actually has her degree with a business degree with an HR minor in it, but it's not anything she's really practiced, especially in schools. It's very different than other businesses. So, but I've already talked to her about. There's some programs out there to participate in, just like we have with WASBO. NISBA is one of the organizations that put out help. It's called help. It's an HR training. It goes 2 weeks and then you're 3 years. I went through that. She's happy to do it. Excited. She gets the position to learn something. So, but with her and Jerry and Hannah, that could be worked out. So. Transportation, that those 2 areas include service, team up again with others and show them the financial piece of both of those areas show them fun. And so there's other support staff and staff that can help with doing the other 2. So yeah, I'm very excited about some of these discussions. But she has her. One of the things we asked for, and I didn't know if we would get, is her certification through WASBO. And why that's important is because it does focus on making sure you have experience, training, or education in the functional areas that fall under the business office. And so she does have her WASBO business official certification. And so that's really, that helps me know that she does know. She wouldn't have thought that.
You just recently got your.
I figured, I might as well apply for it and get it. I certainly have the time and experience, especially if it was something we were going to ask for through this process. Anybody with a business degree or business experience could come in and do this, but the learning curve is large. It's just because there's so many nuances with schools that and I would worry. I don't mind bringing people along, but I would really be concerned. Fresh person. Not a lot of little. And there's lots of little things to understand in your presentation about the increase to the special ed funding. It's wonderful for schools. It doesn't really benefit greatly because we're at 9.4. We're not even to the max, the low max, even with our enrollment. And so we have to maximize our funding, say like that. And so, but then we have these high needs kids who need funding. It's really one of those situations that it's hard to get. You don't understand some of that. Yeah, I'm excited for her. I think And I was happy to see the rest of the team is excited. She has a nice way about herself. Very calm and confident and really like.
So that's a big deal.
Yes.
So what did you know about that? Excited about that. And just another little addendum there, something I've been working on. Well, I think it was last week or I forget, I met with, Blair Daly, Randy Spalding from the state board, and Richard Reeves, who was the author of this book. What they're working on is a state commission on boys and men, because this, you know, the state really is big into demographics of categories of people that they want to champion. But one of the things that they realize that it kind of gets ignored is that a major issue and across the nation and in our state and some in our school, boys are underperforming in almost every category we want to look at in terms of school. Most of our behavior problems, they're mostly the ones in jail, they're mostly the ones that are dropping out, they're going to college at lower rates. They're 90% of our jails, they're 75% of our suicides in the United States. And so he has a bipartisan legislative support for a commission. Now, a commission really doesn't do anything other than it brings legal resources to study and champion methodologies for maybe addressing some of those issues. Whether they're, you know, and so I included the Senate bill and the House bill. It's both parties are being supportive of it, and I included their website if you're interested in more data and information. I think that schools could do a better job of addressing the needs of boys. They're different. So,
And that's not a uniquely American problem. It's in the Western world.
Yeah.
Reminds, we had a teacher here, I don't know, Jerry, if you know this or not, but we had a teacher named Colin McGrain, who's now in the Shelton school district, but he formed a boys reading club, and where he took like books from Star Wars or World War II, a lot of pew pew and boom boom and things that boys are typically, not all boys, but typically interested in, action, adventure, spies, that kind of thing. And I thought that went pretty well. I'm not sure why that disappeared. I think there was a complaint that he wasn't allowing girls into the boys read club, right? And even though there was a girls read club, but girls had to be in the boys read club, and then they acted differently, and so I think it just sort of fell apart. But doing things like that could really assist, I think, because it is a problem. We tend to focus on groups that we see as, being marginalized or whatever, and we forget that we're not all boxes, we're all individuals, right? And so anyway, I'm happy to see you doing that.
Thank you. And if we make school better for boys, I think it will make school better for boys too. Because people always look at them a lot.
Well, as the advocate for us, I know that for a fact.
For gas, then.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time here in the principal's office.
Okay, that's the end of
That's it, yeah.
Okay, Anna, you're now.
All right, so just, we've been doing gardening books activity on Mondays from 11 to 1, out here by our garden. And this last Monday, we had the Family Center come and they helped us with gardening in Southtown. Reading Foundation comes every week and gives out free books to kids. I give out otter pops and kids pick vegetables from the garden. Right now, we only have lettuce, sugar snap peas, although they're almost gone. Those are, I think, what we're having, and kale, but the tomatoes, there's a ton of green tomatoes up there, so in a few weeks, I'll be gone, but you guys will be having some red tomatoes for everybody. Oh, the strawberries got picked like crazy yesterday. But the kids get a little bag filled with vegetables and fresh fruits and stuff, and then they get their books, then their otter pops, and the parents get to talk and socialize. And then the Salmon Center came, did little presentations. Last week, the conservation park came and did a bunch of presentations for the kids, which was really neat. So it's a great opportunity for the kids to come and participate.
How many children might be present?
We have a lot of families that keep coming back, which is great. The kids get new books every week. And so I'd say we probably have 30 kids a week. Not all at the same time, but between those 2 hours,
Oh,
probably about 30 kids.
that's
So
good.
it's a couple of families.
They're dropping. That's good.
So that's been really fun.
And when do they get to pick the vegetables and?
At the same time, so we set it all up right there by the
Oh,
gardens.
I see.
Yeah, so they come on back and the books are there. I'm there with a cooler full of otter pops and garden
Wow.
pops for the kids. And they go through, pick their vegetables, get their otter pops, get some books.
I'm sure you've got plenty of kale.
With lots. You know what, I actually took a bunch of.
Oh, somebody actually took it?
Oh, no, we have kids and families who take it, but
Really?
there's a lot of kale, because it grows so easily.
Oh,
So you have so much, so I just took a whole bunch and washed it and froze it because it handles freezing so well.
I saw a really good recipe for kale, you wash it really well and then you throw it away.
I think it's delicious.
Right.
But yeah, we have a lot of kale, we do.
That was a short YouTube.
But it's been a lot of fun, and I love South Sound Reading Foundation. They just come with so many books, and like they just support our teachers with books constantly. They say, hey, we really want some more of these kinds of the kids are loving these novels, so they will bring a box full of those, which is just
But this is the modern day book of the,
yes.
60 years ago.
Well, I think of sorts, it's funded by a variety of organizations. Bookmobile is basically a library and you check them out and check them back in. These are all free.
So our kids keep.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah, so they can keep them, it's great. We've got teachers coming in starting about August 19th. They're gonna come on back and start setting up their classrooms, but nobody is moving classrooms except over in the middle school a little bit, but it's not major. So, it's, you know, in some years we've had like 3 or 4 teachers moving classrooms for different reasons, you know, to collaborate and stuff like that. So it's actually gonna be really straightforward this year. So, but teachers are coming back in. They can come in earlier if they want to, but we talked to Apollo and kind of made it clear that like the 19th, that's when we've got some, you know. So focus is gonna be on setting things up and getting things ready, so they're gonna try to abide by that timeline as much as they can. With things, which will be good. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We have open house on the 26th, so you know, we saw that we have the staff PD days on the 26th and 27th. The 26th is also our back to school night open house. And we have, we are also combining that with a resource fair. We were talking to the bigger school districts in our area, and there's so many community resources that they access on a regular basis that a lot of families don't know about here in Grapeview, even if they qualify for them. So we have Crossroads Housing coming. So I reached out to basically every resource I could in Mason County, but these ones have confirmed. Crossroads Housing is coming, WISE Wraparound Services, Catholic Family Services, Family Education and Support Services, and the Coalition of Mason County Churches are all coming to set up a little table and have flyers and talk to families in our community about what they, you know, what programs they have for them. So that I'm really excited about that, and hopefully we'll get more. That's just what we have coming so far. And we use a lot of these resources already. We have students who have the WISE Wraparound Services. We have students that work with the Coalition of Mason County Churches. They provide our backpack program for food for the weekends for our students. So we work with some of them, but they're going to be there to really talk directly to the parents. We're here. We have resources for you. We have supports for you. And this is how you reach out to us. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, we're gonna have the PTA will be here as well. And probably we invite the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts.
What organization does the veterans?
The Coalition of Mason County Churches.
Is South Sound running in Shelton, like you said, I don't know.
Yeah, I did send them an email. Thank you. I hope that they can come out. Same thing with the reconnection. I hope they can make it out too. Several people said, hey, we're gonna try our best. They haven't confirmed. These are just the ones who confirmed. And then on the 26th and 27th, like we said, we have PD days going. We have a lot of great stuff. Our LLT team and Jerry are going to the Character Strong conference. It's tomorrow and Thursday. And so they're gonna come back with even more ideas for using Character Strong. We've been using it, but even better ways to using it with students next year. And using it, we've got some plans in place to use it with a little bit more fidelity, so that they're consistently getting those messages. We want, a unified message in our community. These are our focus words, we're focusing on empathy, cooperation. So that's gonna be good. And I went to a Character Strong training in January for several days, so this is the other team going to it. But that's all I got.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, move on to section number 9. Outreach and service. Tracy, I guess this is what we're going to be talking to.
First time, I'm just giving a monthly report real quick. Yeah, right down that. So the general fund, the county treasurer as of June 30th has 558,222.67. ASB at 16,1261.58. Capital market projects at 132,476.04. Transportation at 152,914.23. And the debt service fund at 561,946.55. And they're taking any fund balance for the month of July, about 609,260.42. So this is where what we actually have happened, you'll start seeing in our numbers. And so as you can see, the projected is increasing, which I hope for. I project really high on vouchers and bills for the last 2 months. Anticipating that something comes through, and so it leaves us with a little bit higher balance, which is nice. We are going to receive our safety net money. There's one final report that we have to submit, which we will do before the deadline. And so in the year-end projected balance, I've included $50,000 of the $78,000 that we'll be receiving. I did that primarily because I use that number as our beginning fund balance in the budget. So because we really get it, and it helped us meet all of our goals. So, but now I'm projecting a new fund balance with just the 50,000 in there, 611,356.42 per year end. So we've done really well at holding the expenditures and getting yourself back on track there.
You get for the same one.
We applied for 80,000, Jerry, and I think they moved it down to 78,200 and something, and so we should receive that amount.
Should be 70,000.
Basically 3 special, one self-contained medicine, which is today, and then 2 other students here.
Good, that's good news. And it'll be something that we'll have to do every year.
Could have been out. One of the last programs received a video of one student and a $100,000 cost. So that
The special ed cost was one of the factors of our expenditure increase. And to do with special ed students and of course our insurance, that we've done to do that too. So and then adding this back in. When we've done our budget planning, I know what's out there, we talk about it in there, but I really didn't include it until we got closer to actually. And they have been at us now the last whole day because I started at June, so I'm not to sit there all day and find out. So it's a kind of a preliminary, and Jerry got a letter that they preliminary, kind of preliminary award. We just have to send in a last report of our actual expenditures through the end of July, and then they'll confirm. So that's really good news. Any other questions? I'm gonna jump into the budget. So this was a challenging budget this year, but I want to just thank everybody. We started back in March, actually, I was looking back at my notes. In our admin team, started to talk about what we were looking at, what we could see happening with our enrollment decline. Knowing that we were losing revenue in Esther, so that's really when we start the process. Sometimes it's in depth, and sometimes, you know, we kind of go along until the legislature gets done, especially if they're thinking of big changes. But we started this process in March, so I'm happy to say that this is the last time I'll talk about it. So I have a PowerPoint, which is going to give us just a high level overview. So this budget is based on a student FTE of 198, and that is for our enrollment in kindergarten through 8th grade. It also has a student FTE for transition to kindergarten of 12 students. And so Hannah was talking tonight, I think she already knows that we have more than 12 students registered even for TK. So that's good news, and that's kind of where we want to access budget. I want to see numbers coming in. I think we're feeling pretty confident that we will in K through 8 come in higher than 198 FTE. We're just not sure for you. As always, this budget is primarily focused on goals and objectives of the district, with student achievement being number one. There's a big focus on STEM, social emotional health, and academic growth for students. It also maintains our 9% projected minimum fund balance, which is directed by policy from the board. And so we were able to do that. I did our 9%, so that's really good. And the reason they were able to get there is because of the adjustments that we made, and I'll talk about that a little bit too. And peeling down on staff and changes. So I'm going to start a little bit with history, and I always do this, and looking at enrollment. So enrollment drives our staffing, and both of those things drive the revenue that we get from our state. And so this kind of gives you kind of a 7-year history of our enrollment. And Hannah was right about our FTE, that did 240 FTE. That year when we reported, we lumped those kids actually into kindergarten. They were coded a little bit differently, but it went on that enrollment report. And hopefully someday the state will just change it and put it all together so it isn't so confusing. But so that number, the 239, represents the 17 kids that we have in the TK, as well as from that point forward, it's separate numbers everywhere. And so that
when you back up in those history of 2021, that was pre-K, was that pre-TK plus COVID?
Plus the big 8th grade, correct? So there's also a large 8th grade class that graduated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, thanks for the color.
Yeah, so kind of, if there is a cycle too, you can kind of see, you kind of start, moving up. I don't think we've ever been at 240 except in recent times, and that is because we've added that TK. So we'll be able, when we jump up, we're going to see those numbers bigger. So our average at for the 23-24 in the last year was 219, again K through 8. And when we looked at that, plus looking at that large class leaving, those 32 kids, some other information we were getting back, we do surveys, we talk to parents, so we kind of get a good feel for who's leaving the district. What we really don't know at time of budget is who's coming. We can certainly look at numbers and do some estimations, but if I can, I always try to build it just knowing what we know, because we could open the year. We don't want to have to not open with the number of kids that we budgeted for. I've done that my time. I don't want to. So that just helps us meet our other goals and objectives when we get kids over the budgeted amount. So all of that brought us to the 198 FTE. staffing, this is a 7-year history of our staffing, and it is broken out, the blue being the, certificated staff, and the, red being the, classified staff. And so, we've talked about this a few times, but we overall decreased staffing by 2.23 FTE. So when I talk about FTE, that's full-time equivalent. We did a lot of things within the school. So when we talk about para, and I want to talk about this part because it's people like Mr. Mueller kind of needs to hear that it wasn't just this blanket cut of, you know, moving people out of the classroom. Always the goal is to have as, you know, many teachers and staff that we can, and wherever the need is in the classroom. Kids. But we were able to put a para back in the classroom that was actually in our office. And remember, Katie was paid, half of her time was paid out of ESSER dollars. So losing those dollars didn't allow us to keep her in that position. It wasn't funded anymore. And so we did decrease a para in the building. We actually we decreased her to 2, not FTE, but 2. Which was a chunk of money that we saved, $100,000. But we also put Katie back in, so we're down 1 para overall. Plus, we also brought in our teacher, our interventionist teacher. She was ripped during the process of budget, but she was contracted in June after we kind of really settled in the budget. So that help on kids is there too. So there's a good significant, the programs being, and needs of the program are being met by the staff that we have. We haven't pulled things away from kids. We move things around. For some areas, like now, we'll probably be hired for our kitchen help that we had. Maybe not to the level that we had last year, but we'll start to bring that back slowly. And that's in budget. So when we say we cut, yes, we did cut, but not a significant cut that would impact kids. We also, the other piece was 1 FTE for our teacher. We lost that large class. When those kids moved into middle school, that's when we added and broke out how we were teaching for those kids. And that large class is left. So we plan on bringing the teacher back once we have kids that we had to manage in those classes. So that's kind of how we ended up where we are with staffing.
The people that we brought back, are we able to diversify them a little bit better than we would a para? Like if we can keep the Kate in the office, we can then use her in other escrow dollars. Does that make sense? Or is there a time where we can
back up that we've so we actually moved a little bit of Brittany's time in the morning to cover her office because we do have a new secretary coming in. And so she's funded right now. Brittany is a little bit out of the superintendent's office, a little bit out of the business office, HR actually, and a big chunk out of transportation. She does a lot of secretarial work for transportation. Some of that we're going to put her into student supports in the office. So she can kind of cover in the morning while the new secretary, especially during the enrollment, they just need a lot of time for the process. So there'll be coverage there. And actually, Michelle coming back is another great person that we can use just as backup or subbing in our office. She'll be a very nice aide during that time. So we have some backup there. And of course, we can pull. But Katie is being used, you know, to be with students. And so it's harder to pull her off of that because then it impacts the students. So we try to fill the non-student related things, although that is student, you know, in other ways. But your question made me, I think we've said this before, there is a shift in philosophy with our intervention program. We've always pushed in or pulled out and used paras a lot for those small groups. That's changing somewhat. And we're using a teacher teaching staff. And there's the biggest reason for that is because we get funding. And so our funding too. The person around, right? Our funding formula really restricts us, especially in the KP. Our class size has to be one student or 17 students to 1 teacher. And so that helps us do. We have a teacher that we can have on staff that during those core subjects, because of numbers so much and. And, you know, parents are great too, but we don't get funding for them. The funding source isn't from the state. You only get 3 point something FTE. It's awesome. For all schools except the other programs like transportation. Very small. So the next piece we look at, revenues we look at first, and then we look at our general fund, our fund balance. And so, this budget has a beginning fund balance of $571,940. It has total revenues of $4,011,151 and expenditures of $4,198,505. That leaves us with a projected ending fund balance at the end of this fiscal year's budget of $384,586. And the board has a 9%, minimum 9% fund balance, so we need that to go tight. We only have about $500 left over, but we still need that goal in this budget. So. We talked a little bit about how students and staffing generate our revenues. And so one of the things we always look at, and Les likes this information, our per student cost is actually in this budget at $10,860. That's the guaranteed amount that you get per FT. So if our enrollment is bigger or larger than 198, we get $10,000 more per student. Other revenues that we receive are federal grants, state grants, and our enrichment levy. Special education is another piece of our revenue that we get. I mentioned this amount, so basically in this budget, we will receive based on about 31 kids, which is 2 FTE less than last year's budget. We will net more revenue of about $17,600. The reason I even point that out is because when we look at expenditures increase over 100,000. And so that points out again how important that safety net is to make someone have that. But that really is a major cause of why we have to look at all the budget and make adjustments in other areas to accommodate those dollars. Those are non-employee related dollars, but we have to make it up somehow because we have to pay those bills. So it'll just be important to just keep applying for safety net in years to come. Just really watching in other areas. Be challenging. Also, revenues are increased by the IPD increase of 3.7%. We do and will receive reorganize our regionalization that started last year. There's a 4-year cycle on that, so for 4 years we'll get 6% more for salaries, which is nice. That helps us. And also our SEB allocation increased to $1,178 per funded FTE. Next piece of our revenue is our enrichment levy. And so we passed our levy, and our new levy for this coming year will be $846,724. We expect revenues in total of $869,490. So that's a combination of our fall levy, which is collecting at the last piece of the 2024 levy of $807,000 and a reflection of this new spring levy. And so I think I just mistyped something. This should be but our cost per thousand is 56 cents and 66 cents per thousand for our enrichment levy. And we will be receiving about $93,000 more in levy this year in revenues. And I know it's all of us think you're all great, that's because we're paying more tax and agree with that. But it does help us maintain the programs that we have. It really does. I wish it could change someday in life, but right now we need those dollars to continue to operate like we do. On the expenditure side, major changes or increases. So salary increases for staff are between 2.5% and 8%. And so although we get the IPD from the state, plus or COLA, if you want to call it that, cost of living increase, was 3.7%, We also have built into our salary schedules, step increases. And so when you add an IPD on and step increase of 3 or 4%, that gets your increases up pretty large. And so that is, again, something we have to balance. It's something we have to do to be competitive with other districts. All other districts are doing the same thing. But it becomes challenging at budget time when we only have certain ways to increase our revenue. That is one of the things that can help support our, you know, our levy helps support too. Also, is this in the expenditures, of course, is the $78 per month increase in SEB payments the district pays per FTE. Budgeted substitutes at 45,000. 4 professional development days in, 3 of them are state funded, quote unquote, only to a certain amount. It's not enough money to pay for the staff, but it does happen. One's district funded. We have allocated amounts for annual cash outs, for retirement or leave cash outs. And our insurance, this was a great thing that happened at the end of the year. So we ended up budgeting 83,000. That's our projected invoice for our new insurance company, which is $7,000 less than we actually paid last year. Yeah, and 28,000 less than what we were projected to pay for our insurance from Clear Risk. So that's a big bonus for us. Special education expenditures, this is what I was talking about. So they are $103,000 over what we budgeted last year. So those are the big items that we have to adjust for in this budget.
We're saying that 100,000, 200,000. 103 over last year.
Budget, yes. There is a program breakout in here. I really can't remember off the top of my head. It's more like 400 and some thousand, 420,000. That we budget in total for special education. The next one is just a little pie chart that shows you what we have expenditures by object code. And the object code is defined over here. So basically, salary benefits, big view of it, supply materials, and the percentage in those categories of our budget that we spend in those areas. And then I do it again by activity. And so it shows you the percentage that we spend on instruction, instructional support, food service, transportation, maintenance and operations, and our district support. And those numbers remain pretty consistent.
So how does that 64% over there, growing or? 64 historically?
It's pretty consistent, yeah, it's pretty much.
That's what our, how our peers do. We don't.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. I mean, it's pretty, I would imagine it's pretty, you know, when you budget, you want to keep your salaries and benefits below 80%. And we're right, we did really well this year, because if you get above 80%, there's many things you can't do. If you start to, you know, lose revenue or have to make adjustments, you can't, you simply can't. So, because you're under contract. And so getting much over that is really challenging. It should be a little bit. This is what we call our MSOX disclosure. And so I think this one rubs me the most. So MSOX are costs that are non-employee related. So it's the cost to run the building, our utilities costs go in here, our insurance costs, all of those things go under MSOX. And we're required, OSD requires that we break out those that we're paying out of program 01, those which is basic education, those that we're paying out of program 97, which is district support basically. The total and how that looks compared to what our revenue is. And so we definitely spend more in those areas than we receive from the state. But this year, they were generous enough to give us money to help for our insurance costs of about 10 grand. because we're budgeting at a lower number, we actually are receiving about $10,000 less in revenue because it's based on FTE, which if you ask me is ridiculous. But then we did last year. So really, we didn't get anything more, even though they think they did. So we have a deficit of about 10,000. But this is the difference between what we receive in revenue and our cost in this area.
Usually.
We'll make that in other areas. Yes.
Trace,
So this is by activity too, so.
can you spell out what the M, the S, and the O, and the C is?
Oh, it's maintenance, supplies, operations. And something.
They used to call them, how about another one? They used to call them NERCs,
NERCs.
non-employee related
Yeah.
costs.
That was easier. But I'll follow up, Tom, to
But
make sure.
in a couple of years, I'll remember what MSOCs are and change it.
So anything that's not employee related.
Right.
And so also in here is our non-piping and things like that, because they're not employee related. So those numbers, it brings that up, our utility costs. Those, those are have a big impact. Our payment for our high needs students that are attending, that's also. No, I take that back. It's not.
This Ryan,
Yeah, technology.
On, in, go up the next contract.
Yes.
That was,
I
as
remember.
I remember historically.
70 to 100, I think I have 90,000. Okay, then this is just going to be a brief overview of each fund. Capital projects fund, we have revenue projected at 1,401,800, expenditures at 1,361,800. That is our small schools modernization grant that we're working on. And so we will receive some indirects. And so I'm showing the beginning fund balance here of 133,476 and an ending fund balance of 173,476. That difference is the indirects that we don't plan to spend, basically. I did budget some of them if we could choose to spend them on something, but not. So it would be nice to be able to let some of that kind of stuff and build that balance back up. Debt service fund, this fund is used just to service the debt of the district, which is our bond. And so we pay principal and interest payments out of this, and what goes into it is local property taxes and temporary excise tax, so they're very small. So we start our figure with 561,947. Our revenues are at 986,618. Our principal and interest payments for the year are 1,124,683. And the year was 403,000. So we're losing a little bit of that excess balance. And that has a very small effect on the cost per thousand or the levy that we have to have here to support the transportation vehicle fund. We are expecting about an $82,000 payment, which is about $50,000 more than we would normally receive in our depreciation this year. We're exiting bus 11, so it's kind of a balloon payment, I guess. And so that'll put our beginning balance at 238,168. And then for next year, I'm budgeting 38,440, which will be next year's depreciation and any kind of interest earnings we have. I've also budgeted to purchase a bus, which is one of the things I want to start a process with on Jerry before I leave the district so that we can get it. We haven't done that yet, so we want to get a bus on order. But we do have a little bit more money. We need to get in there to spend on that. With an ending fund balance of 6,608. If you ASB is ran by our student body, and I have to say, that since the union has taken over, we have earned quite a bit of money. So about $6 grand in the last 2 years, she's had the kids. work on. So we have a beginning fund balance of 6,000 or 16,460. We budgeted revenues of 10,500, expenditures of 10,000. Leaving with the same thing. That gives them money to spend. We don't have to do like an extension. In the next section, I have a kind of a printout. I don't have to go there now, but I did include because she's really brought these kids along. There is a process that kids go through. They actually have to develop their own budget. And so it makes them think about budget in the coming year. What kinds of fundraising? It forces them to do some planning and some anticipation of what they are expect to gain when they have fundraising different things. And then also it helps pre-plan, what are you gonna do? You know, what social events are you gonna have? So Davina, and there's a copy of it down in here, of her form that she uses to go through that with kids, and the kids sign off on it, and then they submit that to me like the full budget. So she's really worked with the kids and they're doing just it's a first job. Really helpful. The last piece is the 4-year forecast, and I think I'm going to skip that and come back after I go through just a couple more points, and I think I need to go through. Maybe I don't. Maybe you can just tell me you're done. This is over smiling. Okay, let's see. I've always done this, and so I still continue it. I do a kind of a memorandum of what kind of went into the pot there to make up the budget, the things that changed, just like we discussed. And then I also include pages out of the whole budget document. The budget document is sitting right there in front of you and less. Multiple pages, it goes by program, it breaks out in ways. You're welcome to always take a look at that and ask any questions you want. But I do kind of keep some pages for you to look at in here, pulling out for you if you're interested. Couple of things I want to point out is we talked about class or 198 FTE. So our average class size for TKs for kindergarten is 21 kids. So in all the lower grades up to I think 3rd grade, kindergarten through 3rd grade, I budgeted 21 kids. So that's a pretty good class size. And so there's reports here that you're welcome to look at about what our class sizes were in each of the grade levels that we budgeted for. And then as we move through the year, we're going to know are we hitting those numbers, you know, are we going to be too big? Do we need to put things in place? And just to kind of go off of what Hannah said too, is we don't supporting teachers with more dollars only happens if the class size is 12% or 11%. Yeah, 11% more than what we have to be over that number by 11%, and then they'll start. So one student doesn't generate $300. But always, and even our staff is on board with this, is they really try to get other resources on kids if they need it. They have a 1 over FTE in their class size. But maybe their class is just the demographics, it's tough and they're a tough class. So we try to put other help in there first for them before we start paying. Sometimes we have to do it all because it's warrants that. So. The other piece around here is there's a report called the GF10 in the bottom right-hand corner. And this really just breaks out by expenditure again. It does some comparisons to prior year percentages. And so this shows you that this year we're at 79.01 is our total percentage to the budget for all of our employee related costs. So we're just right below that 80%, which is the kids and kids. And then there's some more breakouts in summary in different categories on all funds. So you're welcome to look through that. I won't go through those. I will go down to the very last to the you should have a last section in there that's called forecast. the top of the tall, but that's what they design. So a few years ago, we were required by OSPI to do projections out 4 years. I think it looks like this. I included the general fund because all the other funds are pretty boring, you know, just kind of niche. I want to explain a little bit this time. Sometimes I'll go through and start tweaking and running a little bit and do some projections on what we think it will be. I decided this year, first of all, I don't even know what's going to go for this. Honestly, they might, I think when we had our bond, they looked at it, but other than that, I don't even have auditors saying. So, I just left everything very static. I did 198 FTE and kept staffing at the same levels. And then when I went through to look at the expenditures and the revenue increases, I increased the revenue side by an IPD of like 3%. And I bumped that up plus 3% when I looked at expenditures. And really what I'm just trying to paint the picture there is that we have these costs that we know for sure will increase in our staffing. And what does that do to our fund balance? Because just like we struggled this year, and when we took the first glance at budget, we were looking at being in the negative. That is what we do want our projections to show that to the state, to say there is a time where we can no longer, we're not being funded to support just what we have now. And so that's the story we kind of want to tell.
That, but capture the amount to compare that.
That is, and then this report, the summary called the F-195. It will break out the forecasted expenditures and revenue and calculates a forecasted ending fund balance. And in year 3, so this is current year, we go to 2026, 2027, this forecast projects a negative ending fund balance of 124,227. And then in the following year, if everything stayed like was planned in this, we would be almost $500,000. So don't, you know.
So our reserve gets wiped out in year 3 or year 2.
In year 3, so counting this year, this budget year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the story we want to tell, if they're looking as, we haven't done anything different, we're just saying our enrollment's going to stay the same, our staffing levels are going to stay the same, but we know that, you know, our costs are going to increase by a pretty conservative rate, and so, but we don't see our revenues coming in and having to support that. And it's okay to tell that story, let them hear that. It doesn't mean that's how it's going to turn out at all. So every budget process that you go through, whoever sits in the seat will make that balance. So you simply can. Hopefully by then, attention's been given enough to the larger districts that are actually looking at that. They're in the negative now or a little bit of negative next year. And the state has to look at that.
Well, Pioneer is way worse than this, but I think OSPI is gonna be getting a common story. I mean,
Yes.
we're not the only ones,
Right.
and I mean, we're better off than most, but
But it's because we're very diligent about what we're doing here and we're able to make those adjustments.
I know, but that tells you how, that there's something seriously wrong.
That, absolutely.
And, you know, I mean, whether or not they're gonna pay attention or not, I mean, they're going to have to in year 3 or 4, right?
It's really a legislative issue.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, but it's,
I mean, we're already spending over, 52% of our state budget. Education, where does that go?
well, we were, it's gone down.
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
We're down about.
Oh, as the budget, as the revenues went up, yeah, I mean, we've got surplus revenues.
My question, and I don't know if I have this answer and I'll find it out, but why do we have surplus revenues? Is that because we have the new school tax in there? you know,
It's the-
property values are.
It was the few penny increase on the gas, remember how that was only gonna cost pennies? Right. And the capital gains tax. And so, my question is where does that get sucked up? And in my mind, it's probably at the top, but maybe I'm biased, right? Sucked up by consultants and studies and this and that, and then, when it comes down to when they're deciding to send our tax dollars back to us, it's pretty light.
I would like to see that too. I would love to see the state at least send back our levy amount. And so we're paying them, it's
Yeah.
there. It's being used that's how they take care of levy equalization.
You should be relying on people that, it was like the state, the TV equivalent to about 15,000, take from us. We got back about 200, and we projected out like 1360.
I don't know how we could live without the Department of Education, but,
So,
things would just go. Sorry.
that's okay, I'm trying to overthought it. So historically, have we ever approved a budget forecast showing us what we have done?
In the last year. It's
I'm
only
asking for,
forecast.
I'm asking for a friend here.
Yeah.
And someone in the community says, how could you typically think about doing it? And it's like, probably the answer is that we're going knowingly, that it seems somehow with that mindful, we find ways to erase the doubt.
We do, we do a little, lots of things, this is just like a budget is a forecast of what we anticipate, educated, yes, what's gonna happen. This is supposed to, and it's supposed to be a tool to help us,
You're getting a point for us.
and it's also the point is, there are too many moving parts to even come up with an educated guess of what's going on in the future. That's why I thought, you know what, I'm just leaving it static. This is a low number. We've had to make adjustments. Let's just show them what happens if we don't do anything. And so,
A 10 child increase in enrollment makes up a large piece of that. But there's also a cost with that too, so I'll say, be careful, this is a net value. Okay, well,
I have a question to the teacher ratio. Is there a way to make the middle school more appealing since we can get more students in? Is that a point that we can make?
Yeah, but that's not usually a problem. Last of our 8th graders that just left, there were 34.
And then the 6th grade coming in will be 28, 29.
Yeah, it's pretty close. So our middle school is pretty appealing, especially if you're going.
Well, it used to be where their kids would get to middle school, they transferred to Hawkins because they had more programs and things, so.
The sports was better.
Sports and, but we made an effort to, bring in better performing arts and, improve our sports, which we have, and so since then, we don't see that as commonly as it was, right?
Maybe as much.
So, because I know that my daughter graduated, with 13?
that's a small one.
That's probably familiar to you. You were like 4. So,
we're saying kids,
they get to know each other really well.
No, we're gonna be.
So I think we do offer competitive, especially for arts minded.
That's been wrong.
Yeah,
One thing,
but you're right, I mean, we could probably.
Well, I just look at the numbers of what Hannah was presenting, the TK, there's 20 students, and it builds up from there. My question is, like, where's the market? is that an option?
Right, well, you know, that big class that just left, 11 of those kiddos were out of this. Everybody else.
How many of those are special needs
Just out of
too?
the class. Yeah, that's the other thing, so. And sometimes I say that, I don't know if I should say that, sometimes you know what, middle school kids that come from another. They can be problems, so. Just,
Yeah.
I don't know, I was an angel.
This is what the. We go down in
Um,
that like. Okay. So once more, this is, as usual, very thorough, very well thought out, very clear. This we're to a point where we presented this, and then on the next, our next one is something the new business. We look forward to, well, I look forward, and I think, but we look forward to this is a public hearing. Moving in that.
So I had a quick question, just. I saw the MSOX in there, but where is the brackets? The ridiculous acronym, confusing funding schemes, where is that? Sorry.
Predominantly federal.
That's where my mind was going on, these acronyms.
That's good. I think we should incorporate that.
The names are protected.
Oh, wait, this is being recorded.
Okay, all right, so if there's no more questions, I'd like to close item number 11. Thank you, then. Move on to item number 12. Which is under business for action, so. Help me here, so effectively the public hearing, we are in that process. I believe. So we have information. This point. Furthermore, discussion about it. I'd like to call for motion to approve.
I move that we approve resolution 072324A, adoption of the 2025 budget.
Second.
Discussion.
How much is the new bus gonna cost?
Good question. I'm gonna guess over 150.
What's
I haven't even looked at the list,
what's the lead time on it?
I'm gonna say at least 3 years.
Oh, that quick,
Oh, I don't,
wow.
I really need to do some more deep diving.
MTA is getting them in like 2 years,
Oh,
yeah.
So, yeah, when we look at the area of bus seats, and this is something that's always bothered. If you look at the number of bus seats available, bus seats filled. 50%, 10%, 80%, are our buses being fully utilized? Are we buying too big buses?
no.
I don't think that's a thing.
I don't know if that's not possible.
We have 2 buses that are completely full and over. We probably will, and have talked about adjusting some routes a little bit so that we can fill up the one that goes to the lakes. It's a like load of kids, there's like 35 kids on the bus. And so, but we have talked about adjusting locally right here in our area, moving those kids to that bus.
So just a long question.
Which by the
Why the right side of that? That's for
Yeah.
sure. We're doing the analysis saying that we need a 50 seat, we're gonna buy 50. That's the way it should probably have. Again,
Well,
that's
the
because-
only other thing we will probably seriously look at this time that we have that has are restraints, seatbelts. Because we have. we're very
Seatbelts, please.
It really is our TK kids. They're so little and so not used to being free when they're in an automobile, that having seatbelts in those seats would be a nice add.
Interesting.
But then it would only be on my bus.
What's this? No car seat?
Some of them are a little bitty.
Okay, so if there are no more questions. Well, no. Yeah, we call for the vote, all in favor? Aye. We have an approved budget. Good job. Thank you. Make this piece easy. Okay. Item number C, impact mitigation fee collection. That's a rollover. Okay, and this is a line of restructuring for the building permit there in Grapeview. So that. That's it. Okay. Item number C, discussions of landlord superintendent schedule. So this is next time, need of our discussion.
Yeah, so, as you know, budget, I'm not full-time here, so I, and part-time employment. Board meeting. And they're, trying to figure out a way to ease the schedule. They're too far away for me to not stay over, right? It would probably be a different situation. So. And so I need to go instead. And so I'm looking at the schedule and I need to put those days together. So it makes sense to do a Monday or Tuesday or maybe a Thursday or Friday up theirs. And so their board meetings are on Tuesday. And I talked to them and they're willing to change it to Mondays if needed, but I'm not sure that would really be much of a help.
So we're the fourth to,
And they're the third,
so there's no one.
except for I'm up there.
I expect, yeah, I expect you to work there and come back for a meeting here by 5. Sounds a little crazy.
Yeah, just because last time I drove back, it took 4 hours.
Oh,
So,
That doesn't sound like a team.
That's sustainable.
so
That's ridiculous.
as I looked at the various options, they're willing to move, but that just creates a different problem. It doesn't really solve the problem fully. The cleanest solution would be if we had our meetings on Wednesdays, then they're Monday, Tuesday, take care of all of them and their work and their board meetings on those days. And then I'm here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We have our board meetings, we have our planning meetings on Wednesday. And then it's just a lot cleaner for me and everybody, hopefully. If we switched our board meetings to Wednesday.
That would be the that work for.
It works for you guys.
You're doing that.
You prefer a Friday
There's something
weekend.
there's something that is real beneficial.
Fridays, can be a behavior challenging day, and the additional administration on Fridays really would be very awesome.
Friday won't work.
Stupid.
Friday won't work for it.
Oh, God. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't that.
So you were thinking
I was
Wednesday.
thinking if your schedule.
So it'd be the fourth
That's all.
Wednesday of every month.
Wednesday actually works better for me.
Wednesday works better for me.
Sure.
I'm good.
Thank you. Yeah, as long as it's, so when would this commence?
Whenever we decided to make that
In
happen.
August?
Yeah, we would, well, it could be August, if we decided today to create that in our calendar, and then we published it, we have time enough in our schedule. To make that happen, we could probably, such some things for next month.
Do we need a motion?
This is discussion.
This is information.
And then we will need to, down below, approve a board calendar, which. So.
The first one, maybe the 28th.
Can we inject one thing? I'm sorry, it's probably not. The 28th is the first day of school. I was just gonna say that. If you could wait 1 month, if you guys.
Yeah, we can do that.
That would help you out.
That's really insightful because I think we're better. In my.
I'm not really worried about your retirement fund life.
I appreciate that.
You're at a tight schedule.
So we started in September, that.
So September, we start the meeting.
Do Wednesday.
So right now. it's
Be the
gonna be
25th.
22. 4th.
Same time, are you okay with the time?
It's great. Thankful that we do it at 5. Some places do it at 6. It's great.
We used to, I like 5.
So,
Okay, so we still, so then what we have then is we come out with information, so we'll have a motion to move the Wednesday meetings for Wednesday, so we can make it
before meetings to the 4th Wednesday.
So I will leave item D, move to approve board 2024-25 calendar, I'd like a motion to move.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Thank you. You captured that for me.
I will make my list. Site visits.
Well, seriously, and if you're just, you can't come in like with information, because you'd be just like, not good to talk.
So you
Just
like
don't
to see
start
this
on
cat?
that.
No, I'll be here in the morning.
So that budget that got printed and it's all color and nice.
No.
Calendar.
Calendar. Oh,
Did I say budget?
he said it.
Okay,
That was a
so, moving right along. So Tom, you're up in item 13, legislative update.
I had a meeting with Representative Copeland. I was in a volunteer group on railroad Friday, the big show, the bike show, the expo. And Travis was there, and his wife. And I planned it all. It was a divine appointment. We had a really good conversation. And we're gonna get together soon and talk about how he feels he can better impact what's gonna happen this fall, leading up to the legislature in the back in January. And you know, I'm not optimistic, but like I mentioned before, we need to fight. We just can't say, okay, the state government doesn't believe what we're telling them. They don't believe that a quality education is important. And they got the power. So we have power too. We have the ability to fight. That's what we're gonna do.
Did Travis, I think you said this before, he's certainly keenly aware of the cost of the special needs.
Yeah.
So when that came up,
Yes.
I guess that's the split piece of this continuing to something. So it's a very small number. of students, but okay. One, down to item 14, policy approval. We have a motion to approve policy 2021, budget resources and interactions.
So moved.
I'll second
Good discussion. See. This one seems pretty straightforward, 2000 for this, definitely needed.
But it's one way now. I think it's primarily the statements about AI.
It's a big hot button across the state, across the country.
AI is embedded in it.
Yeah, and the whole issue of let's say, what's distracting, what's available, what kind of policies are we gonna have?
It was interesting, we want to go ahead and have these internet capability, but there is the safety side. Venturing out, so that's gonna be a challenge.
The state is forming a committee on AI at the next session. Travis has been appointed. But people are taking it pretty seriously.
Yeah, it was the subject of our last superintendent's conference, first, right, following the state. Already got a lot of effort, one of the first states now policies. I was uncertain about it. So, and we have people already using artificial for various activities and staffing, and so I think the idea really here are, let's get ahead of it, right? Let's not be afraid of it. We worry about calculators and then we worry about the internet and they all have their issues, and AI is a tool that if we train them and these are great, it can be helpful to them. So it's not going to go away. So how can we use it to make it work well? So that's what they've already been working.
I've got a couple of young 17-year-old pushing through, it was interesting a lot of discussions about career choices today that would be by the time that they're into their chosen skill set, or the skill set would be replaced by AI. And it was really interesting discussion.
See, when I graduated from college, the internet what existed 10 years later. I was in charge of the largest online high school in the state of Washington.
Technology was a huge part of it.
I have a nephew who runs a school for, they call it neurodivergent kids, we probably just like on the spectrum kind of thing. And he's a tech nerd, and they use AI because they just put in a topic, like one kid likes vacuum cleaners. And they just put in a topic and into AI, it comes back with books that they might use and possible lesson plans. And I mean, it's just like this whole salad of information that they can pick and choose from because it's so specialized for that particular kid, and AI does all the research for it. Because it kind of freaks me out. He's like, and it actually freaks him out a little bit too, the whole AI thing. But he said for certain things, it's magic.
Yeah, you have to check it because it's not always right.
Yeah.
Vicki and I have been using it with various things, and we found things that that's not right.
Some of it's fake.
Yeah, and but then other times we found we used it on a candidate they were looking at for a position, up with some dirt, couldn't find otherwise, and ended up not sure.
It didn't make it up.
Yeah, we verified it. We made more phone calls and found it. It's I call new technologies pros and cons, but it will be part of what we do. And this policy really is not changed dramatically, except that it's including mentioning that.
Okay, more discussions?
No, I was gonna ask does anybody know who Alan Turing was? I think that's his name. Guy that cracked the Enigma code and.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, he predicted AI way back then. Brilliant guy, right? And he basically, his theory was that AI is not actual intelligence. It's an imitation game. And so what it's doing is imitating. That's why it's not always right. You know, it's imitating what it thinks that you're asking or whatever, and then it's highly dependent on who programmed. So So it's not as scary as people are making, you know, it's not like Skynet is gonna send the Terminator back from the future, you know, all that kind of stuff. I know that might be kind of fun. But it's really not, it's not as frightening, you know, what's more frightening is what people can use it for evil. That's right, right, that's the frightening part. Not the part that, you know, hey, help me figure out a different word for the, or whatever, right? And it's people using it to scam people and to cause mischief. That's really where the danger is.
Okay, any more discussion? I'd like a motion to run to, call for a vote on approving policy 2022.
I,
Aye. 100%. Okay, I'd like the motion to approve policy 2023.
The approved policy 2023. And we will.
Second,
yes,
right, discussion. This one was last updated in 17. Any discussion on the policy? We need this to run the. All right, no more discussion, let's call for vote, all in favor? Okay, I'd like a motion to approve policy 2124, physical education and health.
so moved.
Tom,
Second, no, West moved in a second.
okay, discussion? When I read this, the second paragraph here talks about physical education classes not to be used or withheld as punishment for any reason. Then when we get down to the bottom of this, we're looking at must conduct annual review. They want to know an indication whether district routinely excludes students from PE classes for disciplinary reasons.
Is that a disciplinary method?
I wasn't sure what that meant. I wanted to bring it up in discussion, it just didn't get done. If we don't do it, then why would we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4?
We used to punish kids by, where they punish them by having them go out and run laps.
Maybe a red more loud.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just. Could we look at that? Please? This one says, we don't do it.
I think it's just to be accountable.
I bet he still has to do the report though.
It just seemed.
Well, we
Does
won't
that
use it,
mean
but they're gonna
it-
ask this, and I'll say no.
Okay.
He has to do the report.
There's kind of the report, so, but.
oh, I gotta do a report.
It says.
They can ask places.
Okay. Hey, yeah. Okay. Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor? Everyone? 100%. Okay. We're down to future agenda. August 27th.
I think we should, set a call or late fall or trade session.
No, we tried that last year, going, not doing it in December.
Not this.
So, okay, for retreat, shoot for October.
And I'd like a topic on at that to be how we are going to look far enough out in advance. And do we have a frame of mind that we can, as it relates to the budget and the fact that 3 years out, the way the current system works, we're going to be near collapse, and 4 years out, we're no longer in school. And I would like our board to have some kind of philosophical or perspective conversation of what are we willing to do to get tough, or what kind of decisions can we make that'll enable us to hang on. And I don't want to wait until we're on top of it. I want to talk about, think about it. And I've got a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts about it. Or in other words, we can't just go status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. We made significant adjustments this year to get the budget into a framework we could work with it. I think it'd be pretty foolish if we didn't project and say, what if, what if, what if? And then what kind of approaches?
So can I, if I bring the discussion here. We are all aware of the SWOT analysis. And in this future vision that you're looking to philosophy, is it SWOT assessment about this shortfall? Is this the way to wrap our arms around this? I'm just throwing it out.
I don't think I know the SWOT.
I don't either.
Strengths, weaknesses, threats.
So typically what one would do from that. Would say ominous task in front of you. You could do a collective group of folk just like that. And there would be a leader, they would have an easel, and any questions, that you can start with strength. What's the strength of GSB 50? Done right. Then what's the weaknesses? Either of GSB 54. And then what are the opportunities for GSB 54? And what are the threats? And it's just a way to, and then you get down to the, and then you start to go back and you prioritize the topic. And it just gives you a really clear vision and it really focuses. We use it many times in finding business started, what we were doing. Last year probably had
Oh, yeah.
a business.
Yep.
That might be it, but I can't, that's sort of the way I know. If there's a better way, Jerry and
Well, I almost feel like our backs are already against the wall. What else can we, for the next budget for next year, what more can we scale back? It's not much.
No, what will drive that more than anything is about everything else, it's gonna just stay pretty stable now that ESSER was a big piece of it.
Yeah.
That was a weird substantial injection of money. $450,000 eventually included, so. That adjustment's been done and we're not gonna get that. There won't be as much change.
All Esther did really was postpone the McCleary decision
Yep.
consequences.
The cliff
And, so really COVID actually saved a bunch of school districts.
Money.
Yeah, gay COVID and, really. And now it's far enough down that nobody's talking about the McCleary decision, which is really actually the root cause. of it.
100%.
So, their
The state will have to address it.
attention span, the politicians is pretty short.
So,
So,
as I sit here and thinking out of the box. How else could we look at opportunity?
My thought is initiatives. How many signatures can we get to say, hey, we need this much more for our schools? How hard is it to get 50,000 or 80,000 signatures within Washington State? Because then doesn't that force the legislation to do something about the school district or whatever is proposed to be addressed?
yeah, I mean, if it's statewide, you need like
It's a percentage of the
300, like almost 400,000 signatures.
Mhm.
And then, but, you gotta understand if we're getting that money, where's there a decrease to pay for that, right? So it's, you gotta have a plan for that, because you can't just say, give us all this money and we have no idea where it's gonna come from, good luck. Right?
I think it's interesting that we look at our property taxes. 52% of what we pay goes to school.
Oh, yeah,
We don't get 50,
but we're
100%
paying
and
for
52% back.
We're paying for a school outside of our community. That's what we're paying for. And those kids need it too, but I don't think anybody's really paying for us.
That is a piece we can fight for. And it's not a law, it's a, it's a formula that they have set up to fund schools, and so they take, all those state dollars and they equalize that to different school districts and aren't probably rich as we are. And so we can fight for that piece of pie back. That's a specific thing to talk to legislators. And OSBI and all of the schools make those decisions. Like, no, we're not going to get back some of the money that we're. And it's all tied to the ferry, all of that happened because of.
I don't think that the majority of politicians sit there and say, hey, I don't want a quality education for our kids. I don't think that. I think when they go into session, like this short session, there were 3,000 new proposed laws in a short session. Now in Idaho, I think it was like 180. Okay, and we are ridiculous in this state. And they're hitting the ground running, and they, once they come up with their little their little program, they go, oh, well, I got the school an extra $1,000, right? And good for me, I'm gonna put that on the back of a flyer somewhere. And then they move on to the next ridiculous thing that's coming down the pipe. And so I don't think they sit there and go, how can we, starve the school districts? I think they think that they're doing the right thing, but they're just so out of touch. They're not here, right?
And it's complex.
And it's very complex, and then there's all these different, as evidenced by your budget, right? There's all these weird, dumb little things that you have to deal with, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna call it stupid. It is kind of dumb that you have to, and when you were going through it, I'm thinking, okay, a business, business degree graduate comes to the school, has no idea about, yeah, they would get eaten up. They would fail, right? Because how do you know about all this stuff?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that we can't go into it thinking that, everybody's a bad guy. But they don't understand, we need to come up with a way that we can do a concise message of why it's broken and what the possible fix is, because they're not gonna think of the fix. People like us and other school districts, the smarter people than me, with, which is not a high bar to reach, but they have to figure out, hey, this would be a solution, and then you present that to a politician. That's how you deal with the legislature.
Okay, could we?
That was my comment for tonight.
So let's move right into item number 16 here, reflection, Wes.
I already did one.
Okay, Wes has already done it. Okay, Tom.
I love walking in the buildings and seeing these paper paths where we're supposed to walk because of the construction that's going on. In addition to fighting for what we're due, we need to fight the claims. The staff is making it bad. And also, I really liked your explanation of the choice program.
Yeah.
Cleared a lot of our minds up. Because we want to get as many kids in the door as we can. This kind of ties into what I talked about earlier. As a ledge rep, I interact with lots and lots of directors. And they're all over the map. And we've got something very special that a whole bunch of districts don't have. And it doesn't matter the size or whatever. It gets harder the bigger you get because of bureaucracies and power plays, et cetera, et cetera. We need to fight to keep what we have here as intact as we possibly can for as long. So,
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you both. I know a lot tonight. That was really helpful. Budgets are scary. We get accessible, and it's good to know that the choice is a big deal. I think it's tricky though that we want more kids, but we can't take everybody, and we don't have enough room, so it's a balancing act that I don't really. I just want to add one more thing on. In my whole school, when kids had too many tardies, the punishment was they sent them off the football field to clean up buffalo dung, which is bigger than anything you can imagine. So, and I'm not even gonna wish I could. Anyway, so I just thought I'd pass that on to talk about what you do with kids.
So we could requisition a buffalo and.
You don't want to feed that baby either. Look in the window now. But anyway, it wasn't about PE, it was about football.
Thank you. Cedric?
I think we need to create we've all seen those ASPCA ads with the animals and with the kittens and all that. I think we need to create an ad for that with our children and letting everybody know what our state is, and maybe it'll put other people on blast and other people on notice, and the sad eyes will tear at your heartstrings. No, it's sad to see the state of our affairs and money, but I love everybody's optimism and willingness to move forward in this. This is a fun.
That's right.
We will.
So I'm gonna end up is the last comments from the boardmanship, you did work. Of the fact that we've learned how to attend this something so we can get it over and get it out. You folks made a pass. Boardmanship. So, I'm gonna finish with you, your words of wisdom, we got you your index.
Yeah, I'm there, keep on the spot, 16 kids. See what I can do to help them out. I think. You know, we have a little bit, fair amount of discussion on the anxiety about finances, because of projections, but I would venture to say that almost every school district in the state, our fourth year is running out of money. That's just the way those projections are working, and then as we get closer, things adjust. We do have a pretty good voice in the state of Washington. There's WASA, WASDA, and then the group that I'm a part of, which is the Rural Ed Center, has really developed a powerful voice, because what's happened is there's lots of little districts, right? But we've kind of belonged together, and they see us as a lot of schools that are coming together to talk about rural issues, and so we do get heard. And so there's hope there, and we will just keep fighting for every dollar, every grant, every way we can find, so that we can not have to outrun the bear, we have to outrun our friends, and then eventually they will see the bigger issue and always come together and become some more comprehensive solutions. Yeah, our meetings are great. They're just pleasant. I appreciate your support on the schedule change. Everything goes. Thank you.
So, Brittany, let's show officially we're done at 7:03 p.m.
I think
Or
Anna wanted
adjourned. To me,
to say something.
I just wanted to say our, Jerry's one of the really big things that he brought on board, the past few years that I've embraced heartily is hope, and keeping hope as our forefront. It's in our tagline that I say every single day on the announcement, that our future is bright and full of hope. The students, their future is bright and full of hope, and that's what the core of our talk is. Education, through the state has been a struggle always. 14 years ago went through a 16% cut. Teachers had a big bunch of furlough days, kids weren't in school, then 180 days. It was really hard. And but a district like ours that powers through with the vision of hope is really exciting to see. So I'm very
okay. Okay, you all.